Welcome to Navigating the Courts, the future Roundnet podcast, where we dive deep into the exciting world of Roundnet. I'm your host, Jakub Poplar, and with me today is a beloved figure in the European Roundnet community, Tom Schreus. Tom is the former marketing director at Brookline, the exclusive distributor of Spikeball Inc. for Europe. Tom has won the hearts of Roundnet players across the continent with his hands-on approach and a friendly demeanor. Before his role at Brookline, Tom worked for FC Twente Enschede in the Eredivision, bringing his expertise to one of the top football leagues in the world. He has also experience from the media department of the ESPN. Today, Tom speaks publicly for the first time about his experiences and insights in the Brookline versus Spikeball saga, which we covered extensively. Ever wondered how many thousands of Spikeballs they sold per year? Take a guess. From strategic marketing and promotion to the crucial role of players as ambassadors, we discuss the importance of collaboration within the Roundnet community for its future success. We'll also dive into the challenges faced by the community, the potential for securing European Union funding, and the importance of setting clear goals and eliminating roadblocks. Join us as we chat with Tom, who shares his insights on attracting sponsors, creating engaging content, and fostering a unified vision for the sport's future. Get ready for an episode packed with inspiration, strategy, and vision for the future of Roundnet.
Future Roundnet.
Hi Tom, so great to have you here.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me, Jakub. Really nice.
I've been looking forward to this for quite some time. Obviously, there was this conflict with your former employee and the company called Spikeball that almost all of our listeners know about, but we're going to get to that a little bit later. But I just would like to start with, how did you get into the Roundnet scene or Roundnet business? Because I remember the first time I saw you was in Paris, and I'm going to share that story.
Yeah.
How did you end up here in the Roundnet world?
Essentially, it was through Brookline when I was working at ESPN and Eredivision. Bas ten Hove, the owner of Brookline, contacted me, and he told me he was selling Spikeball throughout Europe. He had commercial rights, and it was growing very fast. And that was the time he contacted me and said, "Well, we need someone also who knows about sports marketing and can help us grow this thing." So he reached out in December or November of 2022, I think.
2021?
Yeah, 21. And by that time, I was pretty much done with ESPN and Eredivision, because we sold everything we could sell in terms of partnerships. And I was looking for a new challenge, and this young new sport felt really like a challenge. And so I accepted the job at Brookline, and from there discovered a little bit about what the games were that we were selling. And from there I found out how Roundnet was becoming a real sport in those years. And the first European Challenger was organized in Paris, where we met. And to get a bit of a better feeling with sport, I decided just to go over there and have a look of what is this about. And from there it all took off, and I saw so many enthusiastic people. I was there also with my girlfriend, and it was simply the whole vibe, the friendships, the partying, people simply gathering together in a park to play this game. It felt really great. So from that point on, I was hooked.
I remember, as we said, it was in Paris. It was the very first Spikeball Challenger in Europe. So part of the bigger tour series that goes on in the US and Canada nowadays.
Yeah.
And currently all around Europe, so the same, as a part of the European tour series. And I see this huge guy, you, wearing the Spikeball t-shirt, talking to Nelson and filming something. And I'm like, okay, this is interesting. So I came a little bit closer, and then I think you were filming something for retailers in
Yeah.
German. I was not sure, okay, you're German or not, or whatever. But I thought, okay, sounds actually finally doing some promotion for the sport. So I'm not the only one, because people would just post on Instagram. But okay, maybe this is something or someone that I should keep an eye on. Is this person with Spikeball or what's going on? But that was my first initial reaction. Okay, tall guy and actually doing promotion work for the sport. So, I mean, what else could be there? That's a great start.
Yeah. Well, at that moment we were contacting retailers and trying to sell into their stores for them to save some shelf space and put the product out there. And to convince the retailers, we needed people who actually played the sport and knew how much fun it was, and authentically could say, "Hey, this is me. I'm Nelson from Austria. I'm one of the biggest stars here in this tournament, and this thing called Spikeball, called Roundnet. This is growing really fast, and yeah, well, in order to don't miss out, you should also be taking this into your stores." And well, we used some of the videos in our sales approaches to the retailers, and well, I would not say it was the difference, but you felt that when you show the video, people were saying, "Oh, okay, so it's actually people from Austria are going to Paris to play a tournament. Okay, interesting. So yeah, well, it helps."
So, could you maybe, for people who don't know you or are not familiar with your work at Brookline, because you've already mentioned it, what was your job? Because you just said that you were trying to sell the Spikeball kits to retailers. So there are some big out names on the European market. So basically, what was Brookline between Spikeball and, let's say, the end product, if I can go to some store and find it there?
The distributor and marketing partner. So we had an agreement with Spikeball that we were the sole distributor for Europe, meaning we would buy in large quantities at Spikeball, get containers shipped to Europe, and from there distribute on pallets or in boxes to local retailers or e-commerce stores or marketplaces or event organizers, school suppliers, all B2B.
Business to business for people listening. Because I remember first time I created my first company, and then they were asking me, are you B2C or B2B business? And I was like, what the hell are they talking about? Then I had to Google it. I was like, okay, now I know.
Yeah.
So if I understand it correctly, as a distributor, you bought sets from Spikeball, and then you sold them to Eurosport, Decathlon, or whatever, or whoever wanted to sell them. So is it fair to say that every Spikeball set that was sold in Europe in the past 3 years went through your hands, so to say, through Brookline's?
Almost, I would say like 95%, because Spikeball.eu was handled by Spikeball themselves.
Okay, so they had, so the huge majority was
huge majority. Yeah.
handled by you. Okay. And which countries were the best in terms of where you sold most of the things, most of the sets?
Germany by far, and also Austria was a big market for us. UK was, I guess, third market.
Really? Austria was bigger than the UK?
Yeah, Austria was really a big market, but it also had a little bit to do because one of the resellers who sold on Amazon in Germany was Austria based. So that's
Okay.
I think the sets went in the end to consumers in Germany, most of them. But in those terms, Austria was also it was a big market, especially when you look at the total population of Austria. I think the market penetration, as we calculated it, was the highest. So the most sets per 1,000 people.
So that is market penetration. Sorry to interrupt you. Is how much sets you sell per 100,000 people?
Yeah, per 1,000 or per 100,000.
As an example.
Yeah. So
okay.
You can compare how much the product is penetrated into a specific market. And after that, France was first and really upcoming. We saw that really growing in the last 2 years. And also after that, Spain and Italy were starting to pick in it.
Okay. It does not come as a surprise to me that the sport is growing, but did you have also some sort of analytics? Why is it that is growing so much in some countries more than the others? Or was it just natural? But what I mean is, like, was there an event or maybe a viral clip and then the sales went up? Or was it in a different way?
I think, and I only have connected these dots later. I think it really has something to do with the organization of the sport around it. Because when I first got into Roundnet, I didn't really knew about the structure behind it. And after learning how Roundnet Germany was organized, and it was already going on for like 3 or 4 years. And that's when I connected the dots and say, hey, now I can explain a little bit about why this product sells that well in Germany. In essence, because simply more people play it, so more people see it, so more people get introduced to the sport. So I do think there's a correlation between how you organize Roundnet as a sport, how often you play it in a structured way, and how much effort you put into in promoting the sport and playing the sport. And when you relate it to in the end, the selling of the sets.
But, or no buts in this way. I mean, that is, you mentioned promotion. Promotion is a huge part. And at the beginning of the interview, you mentioned something about ESPN and Eredivision. I cannot pronounce it the Dutch way. So where did you learn this craft, right? Because I work in promotion for, I think now over almost 10 years, but I see it, things that are natural to me does not seem so natural to other people, also in Roundnet. But where did you learn all these things? Because you mentioned ESPN, and me as a big sports fan, I want to know more. And I think a lot of people do as well.
Yeah, well, to tell the full story, let's go rewind a little bit further to when I graduated. I started working at FC Twente, a local football club in the Netherlands, at the marketing department. And I didn't really knew much about marketing, to be honest. I just did my job, which was producing FC Twente radio, FC Twente TV. So I had a little bit of background in TV and radio production. So that was what I was doing in the first years at the football club. And in those years, the football club went really sky high. We became Dutch champion. We played Champions League, Europa League. Amazing things happened. But after, I think, 4 or 5 years, things started to go down. We came into a spiral. Results weren't there. We got financial troubles. And most importantly, fans were not coming anymore to the stadium. So at one point, the chairman of FC Twente, we had some rounds where people got laid off already. And the chairman called everybody from the marketing department together and said, well, okay, guys, tell me exactly what are you doing? And so, yeah, and this is true. We all had to write down what we were doing. So I wrote down, I'm managing FC Twente Radio, helping with television productions and so on. And he looked at my note and he said, well, okay, Tom, that's not what you're going to do anymore. From now on, you have one job, and that is sell out the stadium.
Mm-hmm.
So I started thinking, okay, well, that's a very clear objective, very clear goal. But how do we do this? And I was a fan of FC Twente, so I knew a little bit, but also not why people were not coming to the game. So first thing I started with is investigating, doing some research, desk research, but also interviews with people who were supposed to buy tickets. And I asked them simple questions like, why don't you buy a ticket? What's holding you back? And the feedback we got from those interviews and that research showed also showed that our prices were pretty high compared to other clubs. That was the desk research. People were thinking it was not possible to buy a ticket. As a club ourselves, we also said, if you want to buy a ticket, you need to have this special membership, and you can apply for a membership, and it takes about 3 to 4 weeks till we process it. So all signs of no, don't come to the stadium.
Mm-hmm.
And when we mapped that out, it was not really a surprise that we weren't selling that much tickets, because it was too expensive, it was too hard. All blocks on the road to buy a ticket. Mm-hmm. So one by one we eliminated those roadblocks and made it more accessible. So lowering the prices, which is a very hard discussion in a commercial operation, because when you lower the price, you need to sell more to have the same amount of revenue. Lowering the prices, making it more easy to sell, to buy tickets. And also we started thinking, okay, who are the persons who want to buy tickets?
The ideal customer. The ideal customer, yeah.
I'm a football fan. I play football. So probably the most likely people who want to buy tickets are the people who are at football clubs in our surroundings.
Mm-hmm.
So because those guys play already football. So we started with this program where we reached out to local amateur clubs and said, well, hey, if you come to this to the next match of FC Twente, you can get a special discount and you can earn some money back for your club if you come with like 50 people. And also if you come with 50 people, we'll give you 5 Nike balls you can train with. So that was a very good value proposition for those amateur clubs. And those amateur clubs, they started working for us, in essence. And so this project, it grew from 50 to 100 people to, in the end, 1,500 people per match, coming from football clubs in buses, in coaches, towards the stadium, filled with young football players in the age of 6 till 16, and they were all having that first match experience with FC Twente. And I think that laid a foundation of all these young kids in the whole region who started to get connected to the club. And from that, we started also increasing regular match day ticket sales, because when a young kid comes for the first time, he goes back to his parents and says, hey, Dad, I want to come again. I want to go again. And then so that's how it grows. And also later on, season tickets, because the young fan gets older and older and older, and when he gets 12 or 13, he or she wants a season ticket. So that's a little bit of the concept on how I learned what marketing was. It's not about really selling; it's about fulfilling needs. From that point of view, when Twente relegated to the second division in 2018, I moved to the Eredivisie, which is the Dutch league, and collaborated with ESPN as a broadcaster.
Okay, before you share the ESPN story, first of all, what a great story, and you just laid out an entire process that people could literally just stay and copy paste it. Having a clear goal, right, was the very first step that your chairman said, okay, first of all, what are we doing and where do we want to go? And I see there's a lot of parables in Roundnet that people may say we want it to be a sport, but we really don't know how or where. It's not clearly defined what to do because we don't know where we're going. But on the same note, not to talk about Roundnet, I had a very similar experience. I think I was 18 at the time, and I was playing floorball, indoor hockey. I don't know if you're familiar. It's very big in Slovakia, Czech Republic, Sweden. And there was a tournament in my city in Brno in Czech Republic. It was the European floorball tour, best teams, preparation tournaments. On Friday morning, the entire stadium was filled. It was 5,000 people, and I had no idea, like, how is that possible? Because I was the mascot. I played for the club. I was in under 19. I was like, okay, I need money. I have a picture somewhere of a bulldog.
You have the suit.
Yeah. I did a lot of walking acts, not only in Slovakia or Czech Republic, but especially in Germany. When I moved to Germany, because I couldn't speak proper German, so as a mascot, I could only just wave and walk around, and I didn't have to talk. I understood what they wanted from me. So that's actually how I started, like, making money in Germany when I moved there as an exchange student. But what the organizers did brilliantly is they invited all the football clubs and amateur clubs. They invited all the schools in the area. Yeah. It was so loud. And then once those little kids, 8, 10, 12-year-olds, they see star players from Finland, Sweden, or even Czech Republic, I'm getting goosebumps because it was so loud. Yeah. Right. And the atmosphere was so great. And I know that our club also profited from it a little bit because it was in our sport hall where we played. So it was all great. But just bring in the kids, bring in the people, and then the rest is going to happen. And I mean, that's also one of the strategies I think Spikeball has been doing quite well, getting families in or trying to teach children first, because when a teenager comes to dad, I want this, they just usually want to, okay, just let me be, okay, you're doing sport, okay, perfect, I'll pay, no worries.
For sure.
That's how we get more money in. But it's great to hear the story from the highest Dutch league. I know Miroslav Stoch from Slovakia, he was playing there. I think he's quite popular.
Yeah. He was in the team that became Dutch champion.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, and
okay,
but the thing is that, and that's also one of the takeaways from that story is, before that I was doing marketing, but I wasn't realizing what I was doing. And it was the moment the chairman told me, okay, throw all the other things away. You have one clear goal, and that is to sell out the stadium. And you start thinking about that goal. You try some little things, and it's hard work. You have to do everything by yourself. I did all the interviews by myself. I went to all the amateur clubs by myself, printed out these posters, these leaflets, these sign-up forms. I even gave them to the children at some point during after practice, because I knew, hey, if I get the whole process and I know what are the pain points, then I know how to. I know what I need to do, and maybe I can solve them, but I can improve them for sure. And that's how it becomes a success. It was not overnight a success. This was a process of, well, about a year. We started, and with 50 kids, totally true. When the kids come to the stadium, you have these big eyes, and they look like, wow, what a stadium!
It's awesome.
This is awesome. And then that's the real reward you're getting. And from there, it started to grow. And in the end, we had amateur clubs calling us saying, hey, can we be part of this promotion, or when you have a spot free? Instead of us reaching out to them, they reached out to us. And that was when it started working. So yeah. So yeah.
You flip the script, which is the perfect marketing goal, so to say. When the customers are telling you, please take our money. We want to be part of it, when you have to they have to qualify themselves why they should give you money.
Yeah,
And I mean, that's genius.
And one important thing is we gave something back.
Absolutely.
We gave something back to the amateur club, because when they sold 100 tickets, 200 euros, €2 per ticket was for the amateur club as a chargeback, to say, like a thank you, saying, okay, you're helping us selling tickets. We want to give something back to you. And that's also a motivation for somebody who is doing it voluntarily at an amateur club, helping you to organize this and call the buses and manage the schemes and stuff like that. So it's really about collaboration, achieving something, but having that clear goal set. Okay, for this match, we want to sell this many tickets. Of the 3,000 tickets we want to sell, we're going to sell 1,000 to amateur clubs, 1,000 we're going to sell to club card holders, memberships, 1,000 we're going to sell in the open sale. So those kinds of strategies, but having a clear goal and having a strategy on how to achieve that's really important.
I believe what you just said, and I would just like to pinpoint it, to give something back also to the volunteers or people who are doing something, because I've been a strong advocate of this in Roundnet since 2020, since we started the club in Munich. I said the coaches need to get paid. They're like, oh, what do you mean? It's like, yes, they need to get paid, even if it's just €5 an hour. It's just a gesture. Okay, we appreciate your work. We don't have money. It's like, yeah, then we need to get money so the coaches can get paid. Because if we don't have coaches, then people eventually stop coming, because just playing pickup or just playing for fun around it can get boring if you're not progressing after a certain period of time. I mean, in any sport, right? And they're all, no, you're crazy, this is too early. Now in Vienna around it, they are paying coaches the first year, and it's really not something that you can live off, but it's okay, it's nice pocket money. But more important is this token of appreciation that we know we would love to give you more. We can't at this moment, but at least there is something, right?
Yeah.
And I believe slowly, because we are already, let's say, in year 4 or 5 of Roundnet becoming a sport in Europe since COVID, people are getting tired. I know I was getting tired, if not receiving anything whatsoever back. I mean, it's not about the money at some point, but at some point it is as well, because, okay, why? Why should I only get criticized or whatever?
Yeah.
And then I could at least argue with myself, okay, I am getting criticized a little bit for this tournament or whatever coaching session, but I'm getting money, so I can still continue doing it and improving, hopefully, so I get criticized less. And criticism is actually great, because I can improve, right? Yeah. So it's not like, okay, they're attacking me, myself as a Jakub, but they're attacking the coach, or not attacking, trying to convey their message, what could be done better.
Yeah.
And as much as I love, okay, it was a great training session, I love the exercise, like, okay, but what didn't you like? Were you standing still for a long time? Or you had to look for a partner, you were with one partner all the time, so I didn't mix it up enough. Like, try to dig deep, and people almost always find something which is, okay, I can improve a little bit more as a coach, or as when I'm running events.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
great lessons here.
Making progress, and but yeah, heading towards a goal, and then starting with small compensation of appreciation. That I think that's really important. And speaking of that, one of the projects we were also working on last winter was also to get acknowledged by some EU funding systems from Brussels to get some more money into the sport and make things like this possible. Because the beauty of Roundnet is that you can play it anytime, anywhere. It's very accessible and affordable also for people with a small budget. On the other hand, we see this group of people with a small budget growing in Europe. The gap between rich and poor is becoming bigger. And On the other hand, also what you see is that people need to exercise more, especially young people. We're getting
Oh,
fat.
yes.
So, and especially within the group that has a small wallet, it's hard to find good exercise that's also affordable. And when you only have to buy a set for like 65 euros and you can enjoy a sport in that way, yeah, that's very affordable when you compare it to football or more expensive tennis or other sports. So when we told that story to some people who control budgets from the European Union, they really felt, okay, this is interesting. So this is a sport that's growing. Yeah, it's growing. We have there are already 17 national governing bodies in Europe organizing this completely voluntarily. We have thousands of players. We have dozens of tournaments, and the sport is really that accessible. And that's when that was the moment when also people started, okay, well, this is something when you apply for a certain, I don't know the right word in English at the moment.
Grant.
Yeah, when you apply for a certain grant, then yeah, I think that this would be feasible to get some funding and then to help you grow this sport more and more. And that was also one of the things we were working on. Yeah, and I think in that way, when you first set the goal of saying, hey, we need to help, we are enthusiastic about the sport. We can educate other kids, people on how to play this as a sport. But you cannot do that all the time completely voluntarily, because end of the day, you also need some money to buy food and drinks and stuff and to have a living. So if you can get some funding into this, subsidized or whatsoever, then it's more feasible to become a long-term success, I think.
It sounds to me that what you've been trying to do with Brookline as a distributor of a brand, you are actually doing it as part of a Europe, not a part, but and not on behalf, but you are doing instead of European Roundnet Association, let's put it that way, or the governing bodies who are actually those who should be trying to look for funding, not be reliable on brand manufacturers, so to say. But this is one of the things that I like so much about you, that you saw the big picture. Okay, we have to grow the sport, so then we can also sell more, which is a win-win situation. People get to play more, get to move more, so win-win-win-win, right? And there are initiatives, for example, I don't think almost anyone knows this, but in Lithuania, there are quite a few people. I'm just going to say two names because I know them personally, Migle and Mindaus, that they've channeled to the European Union money already. And they're teaching Spikeball, or they're teaching Roundnet in schools, and they're getting paid by the European Union. And we wanted to do a collaboration, a Erasmus Plus project. We were the first below the line, so we didn't get it. So we'll need to apply next year. Yeah. But it is when you can get funding from the European Union also for traveling and everything. Because I've taken part in the Erasmus Plus project and also in the Erasmus, in the big one. And that is just such an incredible opportunity to grow the sport and get some money in. But it's just shame that people in charge, they have so much to do, that it was not set as a priority. But I believe now, moving to the next years of Roundnet, that needs to be one of the priorities, because we need to simply get more money in.
Yeah, and don't forget that what you're doing with Roundnet is you're connecting people, you're promoting an active lifestyle, you're making people healthy. Those are all things governmental institutions want.
Yeah, because less sick people or overweight people, the less is the pressure on the system, on the medical system, facilities, and everything. There's actually an amazing project going on in Austria. It's called Bewegt im Park, so move in the park. And there are hundreds of clubs, hundreds of activities that you can play for free in the park. So they really lowered the threshold of entrance. And I'm one of the people who are coaching the, like showing Roundnet. And it's amazing to see someone who has never played, they make new friends. And we're actually getting some money from the company. I mean, it's not a lot, but we are there every week, twice a week. And then maybe after Roundnet, I can go and do Zumba or the yoga. And then I may go into a yoga club or sports club. And it's just so great to see, because I was at the press conference a couple of weeks ago to showcase Roundnet. And they said, yeah, the money we spend in, we're just getting it so much more in return. And they're talking millions, hundreds of millions of euros if people are just healthier, right?
Yeah.
So these are all the values that we have in the sport. And that's what we need to promote.
Yeah. Yeah, totally true. And all these kinds of projects are there throughout Europe. The one you mentioned, the one in Lithuania. We had something similar here in the Netherlands. And when you connect those and you organize it also from a European perspective, I think you can also open up some good fundings for that.
But then again, you need to have people who are going to be good with the money and really do it almost full time, because if you're getting thousands or tens of thousands of euros from the European Union, they're going to ask, okay, what are you doing with the money?
Yeah.
Which is natural.
Yeah, and you have to go out there and educate people. That's simply a fact, and that's also and then the circle goes round when you do that, which in Germany was done very good by Marshall and Philip and all the others, and you set the structure right also for people for competitive play. Then you see in the end also sales grow, because simply more people play it, more people get introduced to the sport, and then the whole thing as a whole grows. So it's not about getting a bigger piece of the pie, but growing the pie as a whole.
So when we mentioned that there are a lot of markets that are growing and that Brookline was selling a lot of sets, maybe could you give us some numbers to really dazzle the people? And then my follow-up question is, why don't those people play?
Good question. Well, I think we sold yearly about 100,000 Spikeball products in total, and 70,000 sets, and 30
from those 100,000. So 100,000 products, 70,000 sets. Okay.
Yeah. And other things were like apparel, Spike Boy, Spike Bright, those kind of things. But mostly this was per year, and for Germany you could say I think roughly 15,000 maybe, something like that, to give you an idea. Well, what I think is that most people see it as a nice garden game to play in the park with some friends, and there is a gap between fun play and competitive play. You need to know there is a competitive scene before you can start playing competitive. And from that point of view, I think when you reach all the people who bought a set, I think in that set and on that box, it should also be promoted that you can play competitive, and it should be more easy to get into the competitive scene, which on one hand was facilitated by the Spikeball app, but that never really took off in Europe. In Europe, where you saw some pickup games, but not really that much. So, but I think in the end it was a pretty good tool to get people connected to each other and play the game. So, and I think also in there is the thing with promotion. When you see other people play competitive then it's also, and you play it yourself on a recreational level, it's more easy to get into it. You need to know about it. That's the simple thing.
Yeah, I mean, I've already had quite a few people on this podcast, and I asked them, especially players, okay, how did you get into the game? How was your first tournament experience? And I had this experience yesterday, again, when I was playing with some beginners, intermediate players in part of this project of moving in park. And they say, okay, hit it harder, because obviously they noticed that I could play. And then I just served, and they're like, wow, I've never seen this. So I did a spin. Wow, it can move this way. And then I did a different spin. Wow, this is so cool. And you can do a backspin. I was like, yeah, there are so many things you can do. And they were like so hooked. But now they know where they can get to, because it looks easy in the videos, in the reels. And we had quite a few feature on it going super viral. But once you try it, people are not even able to juggle the ball sometimes, more often than not. I remember you when I showed you how to play, I think in Stockholm, when I play with the kids and showed them, it's like, okay, this is not as easy as it looks. No. And then everyone goes so wild. And then I showed them and said, this is what you do. Okay, we're coming again on Wednesday. And I would not be surprised if they also sign up for the club, because now they know, oh, there is more to it. Yeah. It's not just this. And this is the message that I think we need to facilitate a little bit more. And it starts with the players who are already active, who are in the clubs. And you see someone, just go play with them a little bit. Yeah. Show them you're the boss, not because of your ego, but like in a nice way. Yeah. And then they'll ask questions like, okay, how can I improve? Or what, there is a club, there are tournaments? Yeah. I've heard that so many times before. So maybe one of the goals for the future of the sport could be, okay, how do we maybe we can create a website or something. This is Roundnet, and this is how it's done. And you have tournaments, you can play just for fun, you can play everywhere. The tournaments are played on turf, whatever, or in the sand. So people have this one spot where they can go and learn about it. And that if it's facilitated from Spikeball, Premier Spike, or all those people who buy the kits or the sets, then obviously we would be all growing the same pie. But definitely relate, because I've had this hundreds of times.
But you see, tournaments. An important thing over there, because I think also with here you have the scene with people who play competitive at a European level. Then below that, on a national level, you have people who play competitive, and that's all starts to grow. Sometimes it may feel like it's not growing, but in essence, it is. But maybe not growing as fast as you maybe wanted to grow. But the real important aspect here is that players also become ambassadors of the sport, and also, take responsibility in attracting new people into sport. And because, I think everybody has this experience for the first time. And the first time is not when you see it on social media and say, okay, I want to buy this. Most of the first time experiences is when a friend of you approaches you, hey, have you seen this? Come on and join in. And that experience, that's something, you need to maybe do more. And also to avoid keeping it in one bubble. You understand what I say?
Absolutely. And I couldn't agree more. And let's take a deep dive in here, because you mentioned something very important that I've been telling people for a long time with the ambassador thing. Sure, you don't have to be extroverted, or I like to talk to people, talk to everyone and promote stuff, especially if I like something. But it's about being in the park. And we said many times people are watching. And then in our friends group, we would do like Showtime Roundnet, that, okay, the score doesn't count, so no double faults. You just go and you try to do body blocks to make it more attractive for people who are watching, to really give them an experience. But what do you think is, or are the things that players could do in order to be a good ambassador or to grow the sport? Because we can also take the tournaments, and I'll give you just a point of having my things all around the place and not in the locker room. So, because players complain, and everyone complains all the time, human nature. There is not enough money, it is far away, I mean, the sport is not growing. And then I ask them, okay, what are you doing for growing the sport? I play tournaments, okay, that's nice, but what else are you doing? If I come here and I see you playing in the finals without your t-shirt on, or I turn on the stream, that does not look very professional. And I made the rule in my tournament, you have to have matching jerseys this year. So what are the other things that you see that you've seen in your professional career, how players can make the sport look better?
Yeah. Well, I think when you play it in a competitive way, and and you want to be recognized as professionals, you also have to look professional, and also the whole game has to look professional.
But what is professional? Because a lot of people struggle with this.
Matching jerseys, simply act as a team, promote yourself as a team, taking it serious,
be on time.
Yeah. Those kinds of things are mandatory, and also taking responsibility to ensure that when you stream a game, that you also somehow take that responsibility. Look at professional cycling pros, the cyclists. They have these real. They also start at a very low and almost not paid level, having to travel a lot. Yesterday, I heard the story of the baby Giro, where they all get into dorms. The whole race, the whole teams go into dorms, and they invest all this time for like 5 or 6 years, sleeping in dorms, traveling across Europe, only to cycle, and maybe get that spot in some squad for the Tour de France. And they're not getting paid anything. They invest all this time because they love the sport. And also on the other hand, when they get into the cycling, the pro tour, then they get sponsors, and then maybe the money comes in. And when they get to the sponsors, they take the responsibility to make the sponsor visible, because the sponsor is paying for that visibility. But first, you need to get sponsors, of course, and people are willing to pay you to wear a jersey with their name on it. So that's also a part of taking responsibility. You cannot expect sponsors to simply give you money and have a good time, go and party. Yeah, I would also love to have those kinds of sponsors, but
there are not many of them.
No, it simply doesn't work that way. So people want something in return. And also, one thing I feel like, which is some misunderstanding, is that you can reach out to Audi or Volkswagen or all those big brands, Nike, Adidas, and asking for sponsorship money, but they don't know you. They don't know why they should sponsor you. They're not getting any return on their investment when they sponsor you. What's more feasible if when you go reach out to the people who know you, so people with a company and who can sponsor you with maybe just only €100 from your local community, because it's more likely that when you have success and you play in a tournament, and you don't have to be the winner. When you play in a tournament, you make some nice videos, you put them on your own socials and reach the people in the community where you come from. For example, if I come from Amsterdam, I go reach. I'm going to some local companies here. I would go to some local companies here in Amsterdam, saying, "Okay, I have all my friends in Amsterdam. I'm semi-professional player. I do this a lot. I travel to tournaments. I will post videos which when I wear the shirt with your logo on it, and people will see my friends and my following, which is mostly based in Amsterdam, will also see that you sponsor me. So then you make it very small instead of thinking very big and on a global scale or a nationwide scale. Make it very, very local and try to get that local exposure for you as a sportsman because you are traveling towards this fast growing sport, which sounds interesting still, and it still does. I remember a newspaper in Basel who was interested in what Laura Kunzelman was doing because she lived in Basel, and people. We were also, when we were thinking about promoting the European Championships, we were talking to some PR agencies, and they also told us,
Public relations for
public
people.
relations, people who connect with press and media, and they also told us, well, no news agency or no news media in France is interested in a winner from Germany. People from France are interested in people from France. People from the Netherlands are interested in people from the Netherlands, and that's how you connect with, and that's on a nation level. When you go a little bit deeper on a really local level in your city, there are also in every city there are news media. Reach out to those people and say what you are doing and create that exposure. And when you create that exposure, make sure your sponsors are also visible in that exposure. And you can create exposure on your own social media channels or in external media channels like newspapers or blogs or something like that. So those are things you can simply do if you want to be recognized as a professional player. Act professional.
Yeah, I'm going to show you a picture in a minute.
Okay.
I'm now feeling super confident with the technology, but I'm probably gonna fail because there should be a button for media. Okay, here.
Explore.
Now you should be able to see it.
Yeah.
Okay, now we're here. So look at this. This is the future round. This is when we started. We're very enthusiastic. Benny and Nelson. Benny and I got sponsored by a company called Bamboo. Is also a kit manufacturer. This was Kronen Zeitung, so very known newspaper outlet in Austria. And it just says, with the win, they took home the win. Roundnet Cup. This was sponsored by Hervis. And this is from here. I mean, I'm saving these kind of things throughout the years because once I proved this, okay, we've been in the news, and this is where your logo can be, whatever. And then if people see there is a logo, okay, they may not know it, but I can go to a bigger company who can give me more money and say, look, this is where we've been. And you can just build up momentum, right? And then do the videos and everything. The other issues that we have, not so much in Germany, but in Austria, for example, or other countries, that the top players don't play with each other at the local tournaments because they're just too strong, right? So then on the local scene, they are not that known in a way that they have not won their national championships because they didn't play. I think Ben and Nelson didn't play once in the last couple of years. They were not the Austrian champion, even though they were the best team in Austria or also in Europe, right? So then it's difficult when you don't perform locally because you think, okay, I'll just play at the highest level in Europe, but you also need to perform locally so people will have the opportunity to get to know you, right? So that is one of the issues that we're facing, that maybe players are not aware, but really just starting to go from the bottom. But this was so nice also for me, like proof of concept. We can do this. We got a sponsor. We are in the news, winning all over social media. We can talk now to the other company and so forth. But funny that you mentioned Laura, because Laura was also here on podcast recently, and she said they wrote around 100 emails to big companies, smaller companies, and she couldn't get any sponsors. And I was like, okay, that sounded a little bit odd to me, because it is counterintuitive. You have the best female player of the world, so to say, and she cannot get sponsors, so why should I even try? And we were even thinking about editing that part because she said that maybe it sounds like demotivating. People are not going to be motivated because if Laura couldn't do it, how could I? I said I did it. I was not one of the best. I was okay back then, but maybe we need to change the approach, because if you are big in Europe, the Basel companies, as you said, don't want to see you win in the US or the other way around, or in Germany. They want you to see and winning in Switzerland. Then they ask you, when was the last time you played home? And say, okay, tough, right? So it is a double-edged sword. So what else do you think could players do, like, to attract sponsors? Because as you said, the example with the Giro, there is already structure with Tour de France, so they have a goal where to go, right? They know their risks. But in Roundnet, we don't have this upper part.
True.
And that is, I don't know, like, who needs to create it or how we create it, because I think that is where a lot of people may lose the motivation, because they don't really know why they're doing it. Do you have any thoughts on that? Maybe how we could fix this?
Yeah, I think content production is really important here, because, and I know it's matches and tournaments are still getting not that much views and that much exposure, and players also don't get that much views. But I do think content production is really important, and you can also simply create storylines yourself. I think also in the end the top line needs to come in a natural way. You need first you need the content. The content can get exposure. When the exposure is good, then it will automatically also attract people, and with people and companies also money. So but first you need to have the content creation. So it's really important that, I think, for you as a player, you show what you are doing, and when you show you what you're doing, you can create all kinds of storylines. Like for example, one of the ideas we had also with the Euros was to follow a specific team on its way to the tournament, practicing for the tournament, biggest highlights, and also, but you need then someone who is also creating all this content and also makes it worthwhile following that. And following can be done with friends and family, simply people who know you, and from there I think it can start to grow if you have the content right, and you have it structured in a nice way. So you create a content plan. Then you can also, that's also one of the things you can use to reach out to sponsors, because I don't know how Laura has done it, but simply saying, okay, you can sponsor us. Here goes your logo. That's it. That won't be enough. I think when you go to approach a sponsor and you say, okay, I'm gonna create 5 Insta videos before the tournament. I'm gonna create 5 Insta reels during the tournament, and I'm gonna do this and that and that. Then you have a plan, and then you say, okay, and dear sponsor, your logo will be here, here, here. You will be associated with fun, young and active lifestyle, those kinds of things. So you create a real package of what a sponsor can get in return for his investment, how small it may be. Because, well, creating a video doesn't cost you money, it only costs you a little bit of time.
You clearly haven't edited a lot of videos. It costs a lot of time.
Depends on no.
I know.
But it depends on how high quality you want it.
Of course.
And you see, some sportsmen who really educate their journey, and it doesn't need to have this full edited Hollywood style videos. simply fun clips, walking to a plane. Simple as that. But when you walk to a plane, wear the jersey, those kinds of things. And then you create a package of say, hey, okay, we're going to produce 5 videos up front, during and after the tournament. You as a sponsor will be visible here and here and here. Cost you about 100 euros. Don't ask exactly for 2,000 immediately. Start with small packages. Make it more accessible.
And get your foot in the door.
Get your foot in the door.
This is what I also try to tell people. I mean, yes, it may be only 100 euros and it's not a lot of money, but you're also learning a skill. You need to tell a story why they should give you money.
Yeah.
Right? Exactly what you said. And then you need to act on that story and deliver, because to text you, Tom, can you please sponsor me? It takes me 20 seconds. This is where you're going to get your journey or your logo. But if I create a story that also conveys the message, okay, I took my time. I value your time because I don't want to be wasting your time. I made some effort to really do something, and people appreciate the effort.
Yeah.
Till a certain point, of course, you have to deliver. Then again, people say, okay, I need a personality. I really don't like the camera. We live in 2024. Camera is important. Video is super important. So you can as well learn it at the very low level. Yeah, when the stakes are very low, because then when you go to a job, big job, and you can say, okay, I'm actually very confident in front of camera. Like, oh, wow, we need people like that, because you may not be the best programmer, but if you can explain it on the video to other people, you're much more, you have higher value, because then you can multiply yourself, right? So it's a great skill to learn, something I've been trying to do, obviously, for a long period of time. But that is one. So go locally, to sum up, go locally, create a story why they should sponsor, have a plan, and then deliver on your plan.
Yeah. And also reach out to people who you know. It's way more difficult to reach out to people who you don't know and they don't know you.
Yeah. You're just an email in their mailbox.
Well, when somebody calls me and says, hey, I'm very good at this, you want to sponsor me? I say, well, what? So reach out to family, friends, and I'm sure everybody has somebody within his inner circle who has a company, and maybe not do it for, maybe not will sponsor you big time because he gets a lot out of it, but also maybe from compassion, because he likes you. But then still they need something in return, and you need to, if you want people to pay you, you need to give them something back.
Exactly. So for example, what I do is, when you have plenty of balls, I remember we did it 4 years ago. We were looking for a field in Munich, and then we texted, we wrote email and called a bunch of clubs, and then we asked them for a meeting. And of course, you don't get all the answers, and sometimes you get a meeting, sometimes you don't. We said, yeah, we're this cool new sport. And then once we're there in the meeting, I brought the ball with me, and I let the person play with it a little bit. I showed them how to improve. And then they were like, giving me the ball back. I was like, no, that's okay. That's for you. It's yours. Yeah. So then the ball is in their office. And then I'm waiting. And I didn't ask for the field. I was like, this is what we are planning to do. And they actually came to us, okay, when do you want the field? And we can do this and that and that. Yeah. But I left the ball there, right? So they have something to remember you. You're the cool guy who showed them and taught them something new. Yeah. And I may go into a practice if I know I really want to get this field for tournament, whatever. I find out who's in charge. I'll go to their practice and I give them a free training, football, handball. I don't care. Gonna have a great time. It's fun. And then you are much more different than someone who just writes email or maybe calls you. I mean, people nowadays don't even call. Like people younger than me, they're like, what is phone call? I just text. Yeah. Right? So phone call is the bare minimum.
And then you get annoyed that people don't respond in the way you want to respond.
Yeah.
Well, turn the thing around and imagine how you would feel if someone texts you, hey, can you pay me 200 euros to sponsor me?
Yeah. And then you turn on the stream and there are people drinking beer on the stream. Yeah. It's like, what? I'm giving someone partying money? Yeah. So that is another thing that we have with the stream. But when we talk about content, because we had this discussion recently with Roundnet Vita about trying to cut the expenses or the budget for the European Championship or the European Tour Series, I may say. And photographers and videographers are a big part of this. We have also Jura, which has some money that I think is going to give some money to the content creators, which is great. But even with all those amazing pictures, I show my non-Roundnet friends pictures from Mallorca, from tournaments. They're like, wow, they are amazing. Like, how come they are not somewhere? And that's exactly the point, that we don't even have the media. That's what the PR agencies tell you. Okay, I cannot sell this picture into news because no one's actually writing about Roundnet. Yeah. So do you think, I mean, we love the job. I love the photos, but maybe that's too early, because we have all this amazing footage of pictures, not saying videos, pictures, but we have nowhere to use it. And thus we cannot really pay the photographers the amount of money they rightfully deserve. I talked to Ruben from Roundnet Sports Photography a couple of days ago about this as well. So it's very difficult, like how to solve this. Should we maybe focus that money or that energy into something else, making sure there are locker rooms and that people have their stuff nice and tidy. So if someone external comes to the field, they know, wow, this is a sport event, not a party.
Yeah. I think so. I think so. Yeah, I think it comes. On one hand, you need content, but it depends on what type of content and what helps you to achieve the goals you're setting. So if there's a demand for good pictures, then it's logical to have a photographer. If there's no demand, it makes no sense.
Yeah, we need videos, so then we get the reach.
Yeah, and those are the considerations you need to take, and it all depends on what goals you are setting. And
on this note,
yeah,
if I may, I would just like to point out, and big shout out to jorgeslowmotion.com. Our friend Jorge from Spain launched his new website. He's the guy who's traveling all across Europe to film amazing slow motion videos. I'll link him in the show notes as well. So go give him a follow, buy your video, support the content creators who make you look very good and also help grow the sport. But he just recently launched the website. He doesn't know I'm saying this, but I really am a big fan of his work and we need more people like him.
Yeah, and use those images also on your own social media channels to show the people who follow you what you're doing.
Exactly, because people want to know what you're doing, or at least it's a good highlight for you if you have great pictures, right?
Yeah.
I mean, use it on dating sites. I don't care. You'll have a professional picture. Yeah. You're doing sport. Yeah.
I also used to create some videos of the tournaments I was visiting, and posted them on LinkedIn. And still today, people say, "Oh, you were traveling to all those amazing tournaments. I've seen your videos. Great, man! Wow!" And this still happens today. But if you don't do it, people don't know it. Simple as that.
Yeah.
So if you travel to even if it's a city near you, show it on your socials that you're doing it. So the people who follow you, who are not all into Roundnet, but also maybe also that classmate from 10 years ago sees, oh, what is he doing? And maybe not direct, maybe you won't get a like or a comment directly, but maybe also in a year of time or 2 years of time, or maybe even in 10 years of time, when that old classmate has children who eventually also play Roundnet. That's how it works.
Do you think, because there's been a trend recently that people are making Roundnet accounts on Instagram, Jacob Roundnet, and so on, that they then put all the Roundnet media on one account, which had maybe 1/4 of their followers and not their main account? So in that way, you had this group of people who would follow the Roundnet story, but he would not post that much, or she, on their real story, right? So then you decrease the exposure. What do you think of that? Could it be maybe even counterproductive in a way?
Yeah.
If our goal is to reach more people?
It feels a bit like you're ashamed you're doing it. You playing?
Okay, because I was thinking about doing it, but then I decided against it because my life was Roundnet
Yeah,
or has been Roundnet, so I can only post this anyway. So to have extra account for it would
yeah.
seemed redundant.
It feels a bit like, hey, that there's another version of me that plays
Yeah.
around. If you want to see that version, follow that account. Oh yeah, and there's also another version of me LARPing, the role playing thing. You can also follow that account, and there's also another version of me who likes to follow that account. Yeah, well, it makes no sense to me, but
So maybe I have a question prepared: how to attract more fans. Maybe just move everyone from your rounded accounts to your main account and be proud what you're doing.
yeah,
So you may have the teammate from 5 years ago or whatever who started a company. I'm actually in talks with someone from my studies. Like, yeah, I remember you were big in Roundnet. I follow you, and let's do this and that. I was like, okay, let's go. But
yeah,
because you never know, if you don't put yourself out there, it may not result in immediate results, as you said, but maybe over time you cultivate this relationship with your viewers, friends, acquaintances, and something can can rain from it,
yeah.
right? Maybe just a little bit. But if you don't put yourself out there, you will never be able to get anything really.
No, no, and then yeah, well, don't be ashamed of what you're doing, because yeah, it's not like you're doing something vulnerable to the world or something. You're just playing Roundnet, so yeah, I would
You're
say
promoting
show
sport,
it.
you're doing good
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah, show it to the world what you're doing, and maybe one of the followers, if every person posts Roundnet content on his own account and affects two other persons, the sport grows. Simple as that.
Exactly. That is, I'm gonna cut this out or make a reel out of it because those are some very wise words from a marketing experience. Man,
Yeah,
man,
thank you.
that is great. I want to touch on other topic that two of us discussed personally, I think 1 year ago when we had our meetings in Amsterdam. And you talked a lot about frisbee or dog frisbee, if I remember correctly, about
Frisbee.
being
Yeah.
being a sport very tight with people. Could you maybe walk us through a little bit of history of dog frisbee, because you've done research, you've done this work,
Yeah.
and at that time maybe still you see it as one of the dangers of the sport, especially on the highest level.
Yeah, when well, Brookline was founded originally with only selling Can Jam. Can Jam, the frisbee game. Back then, Bas, the owner of Brookline, he also visited a lot of people who were playing frisbee games. So he once told me the story. He said, "Well, okay, I was visiting dog frisbee events. And dog frisbee events are events where people throw a frisbee at a dog and the dog catches it with its mouth. It's actually it's pretty cool to watch. But yeah, well,
It sounds
and
awesome.
yeah, and but he ended up traveling to all these events, and after 5 events, he noticed, okay, this is a very small group of people who like to play this dog frisbee game, and they're going from one location to another location to another location to another location. And they all kept it by themselves because, well, they felt like, hey, this is our little group. And it was more like a bunch of friends who happened to play that game. And he didn't, those guys didn't think of it like, hey, we want to grow this thing. We want to have dog frisbee world domination or something like that. We just want to keep it together, have fun by ourselves, and simply plan a trip where we want it, to that location where we want to go. He found out, Bas, that this wasn't growing, this dog frisbee, so he could attend more events. But yeah, well, once they have bought a frisbee, they weren't gonna buy maybe one more, but not dozens of frisbees anymore. So this target group was very isolated and not focusing on how to grow this as a sport. And that's one of the things we at Brookline talked about also when I visited a lot of events, I said, well, okay, I cannot visit everything. And there's also a risk that Roundnet evolves into some kind of dog frisbee thing, where it's simply a bunch of friends who like to play this game. And yeah, well, one time they visit this city, one time they visit that city, and another time they visit that city. And they don't care about growing it. They just want to have fun with each other, which is also fine. But then we come back to the topic of setting goals. If you set a goal of we want to grow this as a sport, then that is not the way to go. Then you should think otherwise. You should think about growing and how to get to the objective of growing and what is growing. So define that and define those things. So I think, long story short, it can be a threat to the evolution of Roundnet, that it becomes some sort of like dog frisbee, where it's just a bunch of friends who play around, have fun with each other. But that's what it is.
I can see a lot of parallels to that, because during the time I showed you a picture, 2021, I was living in Munich, where the other half of Future was living in Graz and Vienna mostly. And I would see them every weekend, on every other weekend, in different place in Europe. And I would not see my friends in Munich for 6 weeks. So I would hang out more with guys from Austria than my friends in Munich. And I was like, okay, it is cool on the one hand, but on the other hand, this is not really sustainable. And I believe there's a lot of players that are kind of struggling to balance these two, because, okay, I want more money, I want this to grow, but I also want to hang out with friends and not talk to new people, right? So it is then we have the divisions. There were some tournaments, especially mixed European championship last year in Brussels, where there were power pools, which was very, very odd with the number of teams, where it definitely felt like, okay, we are these people and we are excluding all the others, which I believe happened accidentally, but it was a big sign towards this direction. I think the direction has changed or shifted a little bit more nowadays. But is it responsibility of the player, or is it of the organizer? But then who is the organizer? Because usually players organize the events, right? Or responsible the coach, because I may be one of the few people on this planet, I would argue, that actually loves to coach more than playing, and I want to be a full-time coach and not player coach. But most people coach because there's no other coaches, right? So they just want to help out, but primarily they want to play, and I used to be like that as well. But with my mindset, it's more, okay, I really want to go into coaching more because I gained all this experience in my studies, in my family, and so on. But where is the balance? When we don't have, or when we have a very young leadership, if we can even call it.
I think the vision and direction where you want to go needs to come from the federations.
Yeah.
Set a clear point in the future and say, hey, this is where we want to go. Like I mentioned with selling tickets, simply fill the stadium. Then you have a clear direction. And this can be done in 3-5 years, and then you can think of how we can get there. So yeah, I think it's the responsibility of federations and the IRF, the EURA, and also the national governing bodies.
And then individual players.
Yeah,
of course.
Yeah, that's one thing I'm thinking now of. Is people also have to feel comfortable with that vision and also align with that vision, and it has to be done from an intrinsic way. So you cannot really push it through, and also give it time to evolve, because those mixed championships, that was only like 9 months ago.
Yeah, October, I think.
Yeah, thinking about how things evolve. Also, give it time to evolve and create all the things that are necessary to evolve. But also on the other hand, don't forget about the dot on the horizon.
Yes, the important thing is it takes time, and we are very impatient as humans, especially nowadays with all the short-term gratifications. And of course, not everything we do or the people in charge do is going to be a home run. You have to miss much more than in order to hit a home run, right? So it's all about practice and doing all these things. Sometimes I got a feeling that people don't want it to evolve that much. They may say they do, but they really don't. And I believe there's then a danger if they are in positions, and I really don't mean anyone specifically, I mean maybe throughout the years, that no, we like it the way it is, so let's not go bigger. We like the tournaments, 20 teams, 40 people, beautiful. It gets too big, too competitive, I don't like it, so I'll stop traveling. And then people start to buy into this narrative. No, it's actually good the way it is, but there's constant change, right? And if you don't evolve, then this hype is just going to end at some point.
Yeah.
And it may become dog frisbee, which would be a big shame.
Yeah. And that's if you want top players to compete against top players, and you want more top players so the competition gets better, you need in the end more players.
Yeah.
So and if you don't want that, also fine by me, but then don't complain about the sport is not growing.
Yeah, and there's not enough money in it and everything.
It doesn't
absolutely
automatically. Money doesn't fall from the trees.
The other thing that I mentioned while working with a lot of Roundnet clubs and Roundnet players is that in Europe, in the US, it's a little bit different. We don't attract, and maybe I'm gonna get a lot of hit for this, the elite athletes. I don't mean players like Roundnet skill wise, but we have very little people who are sporty or had a background in, let's say, high level sports till they were, let's say, 19. So played football at the second highest league, or volleyball. Of course, Austrian highest league in one sport is German third league, because there are just 10 times more people.
Yeah.
But you get a point, and then it happened because I had a lot of conversation about split the trainings according to the level and everything. If I come as a former athlete to a training session and I see people who are not very sporty, I can evaluate rather quickly, okay, in 2 months, I'll be the best here. And then I'll lose the motivation. Okay, where do I go? Whereas if I come to a group where there are a lot of young, fit, healthy men and women, and they are playing the school sport, okay, because I want to aspire to be this person, right? Okay, it's not going to be so easy, so I have to try hard. But if I see someone who has never done sports before, it's like, okay, I'm probably going to be better in 1 hour with the sports background. So I believe other thing that or the clubs could focus more on is not like performance of, okay, we need only pro players, but people who used to be very good in sports, who know the work ethic, to be on time, to not judge everything or get offended if you tell them as a coach something. To say, okay, let's go, let's do this, do the reps. Yeah. Right. So, I mean, there is this division already going on and growing, either you like it or not, if you acknowledge it or not. But how do you think we could attract more of these type of personalities? Because in the US, I had 2 guys from the US here recently, 2 days ago, and they were like strong, built athletes, former baseball, former volleyball. So you look and say, okay, those are sports people. Yeah. Right? They're fast. And of course, they play around it. But how do we attract more of those? So then we have maybe even more competition.
Reach out, I would say.
Yeah, I think just reach out. Yeah, just go to their training sessions.
That's the most simple way. And also here, when somebody is talented at volleyball or soccer or whatsoever, also that person doesn't run into a Roundnet set automatically and starts playing. The set needs to come to them. And they need to get introduced. So also here comes the responsibility of people who want to grow the sport. Say, hey, okay, take your set. And do you know somebody who plays sports at a high level? Hey, just go over to him or her and introduce it and ask them what they think and how they feel about it. And when you have a community of thousands of people in Europe who play this on a competitive level, I'm sure there will be some people who know other people in other sports who played also at a high level, for sure. But yeah, they don't come to your sport automatically.
I'm going to give you guys a blueprint how to attract these people, because I've tried it and it worked. So there's this group of athletes, men or women, aged 17 to 19, that go to university. They used to play, let's say, highest league, football, volleyball, it doesn't matter. And they are not going to make it to the first team, because you lose most players from the oldest youth division to the adults, right? Do you agree, Tom? And then they may still go and play for 1 year in the second team or 2 years. And then the university starts, or work life, they don't have so much time. Then there's partying and all the fun stuff. But once they sober up, I mean, metaphorically speaking, for some of them, literally, they are still these competitors. They don't know anything else, just to compete. And they are looking for something to play and win. If you can channel to these kind of people, as I mentioned, for example, Ivo Heinen from Germany, so left-handed handball, then I asked him, I think, very early, I used to play handball Bundesliga, junior level. I was like, okay, 3 months, one of the best here, easily, better than me. Because he had this drive and all this information, but he was hungry for winning.
Yeah.
And if we can attract those people to our clubs, to our sport, and give them guidance as coaches and everything, they're going to figure stuff out. They're very good at it because they've been doing this their entire life. And give them a new way of competing, I think the sport can really, really take off.
Yeah.
So between 17, 19, let them introduce it to them when they're younger, let them go and party for 2 years, and then bring them back. And you'll see wonders.
Yeah. And you know, also one thing that now pops into my mind is also that I think everybody within Roundnet wants the best for the sport. And there are different ways of getting there. Your way is not the perfect way. My way is not the perfect way. Somebody else's way is not the perfect way. But joining forces, not feeling offended very much, but trying to listen in a positive way to criticism, I think that's also important. So you can learn from each other and see what works and what doesn't work. Sharing this knowledge also very important, because those are all little things you can help and inspire other people in making it 1% better each single day. And that's about it. Consistency in getting better, in growing the sport, supporting yourselves, playing around at yourself, promoting yourself, creating videos. If you do every single thing 1% better each day, it will grow. And
especially if you multiply it by tens, hundreds, thousands of people, and there are already people who've been doing that. I mean, How to Roundnet really revolutionized the game of Preston. As when we met in Paris, I played with Preston. It was a childhood dream, so to say.
Yeah.
Me child being 25 years old, which was absolutely super sick.
Yeah, you know, Jacob, the funny thing is, at the Euros, I spoke to Jaric from the Netherlands, and he said, "Well, oh man, I was just staring at Paul Siemer, and he looked back at me, and maybe it felt a little bit awkward because I was really staring at him. But this is the Paul Siemer I know from the videos, and for me, he's a big player, but he must have seen me and think, was that for a weird kind of guy?" So, and this is how it works. This is stars and fans being created real in front of you. Not saying that one of the persons is better than the other, but this is how it works. And we already have these star players in Europe. And yes, it is small, but accept the fact it's small and accept that it's maybe not proceeding and growing as fast as you want, but it is happening. We have big names, and we have also people who look up to the big names. So, yeah, grow in the bottom line, grow in widen the sport, make it more people familiar with competitive Roundnet, and then in the end, stars will become bigger stars as well.
Exactly. I mean, I'm recollecting so many stories when it happened to me, when I was starstruck by the Americans when I went there, but also like Danny and Megan from Tiramisu tell me, "Oh my God, we have fans! It's so crazy!" Like
Yeah,
they're buying our merch, and then I'm here in Vienna around the training, and then one of them is there, and I'm like, I see it from the other place. They have no idea who she is, or that they live in the same city. I was like, who do you think are the best women players here in Europe? Like, yeah, I don't know. I was like, these terms. One of them even knew the name tiramisu, but didn't know who they were. And I'm like, one of them literally standing next to him. Like, okay, so actually we do have them here in Vienna. What? Yeah, because that's the local presence. So the Europe knows, and then your people here don't know. Because as a pro player, I mean, I did the same in Munich. We would just train in the small group and not really hang out with the others, because we would then practice and then have tournament on the weekend. But again, if you don't have the following back home, if people don't know you at home, how could you expect the world or the companies to know you?
Yeah.
Right. I think that is also the big issue, that, oh, I don't want to be a star. Not everyone wants to be a star, Jacob, like you do. They don't like the attention. Okay, true. But if you're good at something, I mean, that's what the pro athletes have to bear with, right? So
yeah, but you're not overnight. You're not a big star.
Of course not.
Maybe that's also something you can make it really big in your head. Oh, if I post a video, next day I have 10 people knocking on my door.
No,
probably won't be the case.
very very likely.
No, most of the times, yeah. Well, some people might recognize you at a certain point, but yeah, well, don't make too much out of it.
I would like to take a 180-degree turn. I think a lot of people have been listening maybe to hear this. So what happened with Spikeball? Because we've read a lot on the internet. We've read the statement from Brookline. I wrote a blog post about it, and so on and so forth. And I'm not going to ask where is the truth, but what are maybe some of the facts that you're allowed to talk to, or how did it all come down? But of course, a little bit shorter version, because some people feel that Spikeball stepped them in the back, stepped you in the back. The others feel indifferent. So what really happened from your perspective?
Yeah, from our perspective, from my perspective, personally, it's very simple. We had a contract with Spikeball saying we were their exclusive European distributor, which we did in a really successful way. We have bought millions of euros of goods at Spikeball. So we were exceeding all sales targets which were mentioned in the contract. And we had a contract until 2025. Within the cooperation, switched to a demand planning, which means we got stock into Europe more than we could afford to pay for upfront. But this was discussed with Spikeball, saying, okay, you need more stock in Europe so you can directly sell when people require the goods, when other companies want to buy at you. So we agreed with that, but with that, we become owner of the stock. So we have a debt at Spikeball. Very simple. Normally, what we used to do is simply, okay, Spikeball, we want goods, we pay you, then you bring us the goods, and then we resell. That was in the first 2 years. After 2 years, Spikeball said, okay, no, in order to fulfill all the orders you get in Europe, you need more stock and you can pay us later. So that's when you create a debt. We were not repaying the debt as fast as planned originally, but we were constantly talking about this with Spikeball. Constantly. Every 2 weeks there was a meeting.
So you were not selling enough sets to pay off the debt? Because when you said you had the highest numbers, like you reached your goals.
Sorry?
So what I said is, so you were not paying the debt in time, you were not paying it off, even though you were selling a lot of sets?
Yeah. Yeah, and we couldn't pay off the debt because we had other costs within the company. For example, transportation costs. You imagine a container shipping from China. We had to pay for the shipping costs. Cost normally €3,000, but after COVID, prices were higher, up to €20,000.
Oof.
So that's €17,000 per container, and one container holds, uh, I think, 4,000 sets. So you can calculate on what it does with your margins. So we had about 4 times higher transportation costs. We weren't selling after the Ukraine war started as much as we expected to sell. So we also had to pay for all the warehousing so we could keep all the stock. We had to pay for that because Spikeball didn't take the goods back. So all these costs need to be borne by Brookline. With all open communications towards Spikeball, they said, well, okay, you can start repaying us in June 2024. So we said, okay. And we were
Okay,
getting...
if I just to pause
Yeah,
there for a moment, if I understand correctly, so Spikeball tells you here there's a lot of goods, you're selling very well, and you'll pay us later.
yeah,
And then there is this debt. In the meantime, the shipping costs rise, like they go 70,000 euros more per container. So your margin, so let's say you're making this amount of money and this is zero, and
yeah,
suddenly you're going down. So you're going into minus more or less, or maybe
yeah,
like roughly here.
yeah,
And then you say to Spikeball, okay, we cannot sell that much. The war in Ukraine has started. The sales dropped as we prognosed. It's not as many. Can you take the sets back as we had in contract? And they said, no, just pay us later.
yeah.
Right? Am I getting it correctly? But how come this business then work if your shipping costs and then warehouse costs rise up so high? I mean, doesn't sound very sustainable.
No. Then that's because we also laid off, we cut operational costs. Those were also too high. So we had several factors of why our margin was not good. And so we restructured. So operational costs were lower, transportation costs were lower again, and warehousing costs were also lower again. So we got from an unhealthy and unsustainable model back to a sustainable model in which we could repay Spikeball. And we always communicated this openly with them. And all of a sudden, they said, well, okay, we don't supply you anymore. And when they stopped supplying us, we couldn't generate more money to pay them back. And when we said, okay, well, this is unfair, in the contract was also we should go to mediation and those kinds of things. When we said, hey, this is unfair, if we don't come to a solution, it's going to be a lawsuit. Then they said, well, okay, we're going to file you for bankruptcy. So the company doesn't exist anymore. So instead of working towards a solution, they never wanted to do this. Never.
So Brookline's does not exist anymore. The company is bankrupt because you couldn't generate enough money, enough revenue to pay off the debt.
Yeah.
But if I'm understanding this correctly, you had a debt that was what 1.2 million euros to Spikeball. I may be getting this.
It's been 1.4. Yeah.
Yeah. And once you filed them for bankruptcy, Spikeball never got the money, right? So it sounds to me that they wanted to like cut off the ties and say, okay, this is a lot of money, 1.2 million that we're never getting, but we just need to move on, right?
Yeah.
And that's something that you were not expecting because that's a lot of money.
Yeah. From my point of view, if I was Spikeball, I would say, okay, yeah, pay me later, then I will get the money. But yeah, well, I guess they want to have better margins themselves to get more money out of the products they sold. And somebody helped them in, hey, look, these are all the Brookline customers. We can give them to you, and can help you with this and that. And then you can ask for higher prices and the Brookline customers maybe also can pay some lower prices. So in the end, we cut out Brookline, and then we continue business anyway.
That's definitely a tough pill to swallow. I mean, people were laid off, lost their jobs.
Yeah.
Company, then when it goes to lawyers, then it just gets messy. I remember us talking about it during that time for sponsorship for Fresh or different events or the app, and then we had to just pause everything because this was going on, and all of Europe were stunned. And that goes also mostly because of you, because you were there at the events, as you showed earlier, and you showed presence, something that a lot of people felt that Spikeball was not showing in Europe, especially that they've been neglecting Europe. And once there was a Spikeball event in Europe, you had the employees of Spikeball playing and participating in the tournament and not really running it, which was also kind of an issue, right? So to to segue from this, how do you think, how important is that the players who are in charge, not the players, the people who are in charge, if either from Spikeball or from European Roundnet Association, national governing bodies, that they should be participating in the events as players and not as the officials? Because you were always there asking people, talking to, trying to get a feeling. But I know that I have not experienced it that much from employees of Spikeball or European Roundnet Association, because they were just busy doing their thing.
Yeah, from my perspective, it's really important to connect with the people that use your product the most, the competitive players. So I think it's good that they were present. On the other hand, you also have a responsibility towards those people who use your product and to serve them. And I think that could have been done better, but it also has to do with how you visualize this as a company. And I think Spikeball has done that really well in the US, but also on the other hand, bears all the costs and invests a lot of time, and maybe not seeing that much return on investment from that side. But yeah, well, in the end, I think when you're there, you can play or you can do other things. And I think when you're into marketing, and then that's what you should do. And
To be on the ground, obviously, and show presence in Europe and show it better.
Of course. You should talk to people who use your product the most, and get feedback from them. Also, work with them together, because you can't do it all by yourself.
That was the comparison that we had. Okay, Spikeball, and then we had Brookline. Brookline mostly presented by you. That this till recently was never there in a way, because there are very few Spikeball employees based in Europe or going to tournaments. Very few, and they have no way of being everywhere. And then there were you were like, oh, this is Tom from Brookline. It's Spikeball, and he's there asking questions. How can we improve? What can we do? And I know you had big plans, and you supported Tom's Roundnet as well with the stream, and you had plans of bringing container and really make it super professional. We talked about a lot of things like that. So that's why everyone's like, evil Spikeball. On the other hand, if we don't know the full story, it is very difficult. And at the end of the day, it's business, so which is tough, of course. And if people choose to go for, like, the way you said it, it does not sound fair, which is terrible. But there are, of course, multiple factors that we're not going to get into.
No,
much, I guess.
In the end, because this has also privately, been quite impactful. Losing my job, working on this thing day and night, and for me personally, I only lost my job, but Bas, the owner, he lost a lot more. And when you ask me, is that worth it to make those kinds of decisions, where you put as Spikeball, to put other people in that position? Well, that's beyond my limits. Do I understand it from a purely economic side, and purely economically? Yeah, in the end, they have a company. They need to run the company, and by doing this, they create more margin, so they have a more healthy company. I understand that, but if you want to do that, do it in a fair way, and be open about it. And now it felt like playing games, and it felt like backstabbing, and it felt like, well, thank you for all the work you've done. We throw you out, and we continue our own way. That's how it felt.
And that is terrible. Like that, someone made you feel that way, or a company made you feel that way. On the other hand, we also have people we are here talking because of Spikeball, because of the company who grew the sport and everything. And it's also, I think, time to reflect a little bit and say, okay, Spikeball has done so much for the sport as the company that we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't have made so many new friends or relationships. And our first kids are getting born from Spikeball or Roundnet relationships and everything. So that is pretty awesome. That's also what Chris Rura talked about. So they've done an amazing job, but I don't envy them, because making such decisions, it's so difficult. That's why people don't run so many companies, or you don't have so many business owners, because it's a very, very tough job. And where do we go next? I mean, we're also going towards the end of this episode. Is where does the sport go next? Because we have the Worlds in 2024. And or you wanted to say something to this to end the Brookline Spikeball saga, as I called it, like some last comment?
Well, no, not really. No, it's
it's water under the bridge now.
Yeah,
we can only learn.
For me personally, it's over now. I have found a new job. I'm thankful for meeting so many new people and experiencing this. And it's also you learn a lot from this. And what I learned personally is, well, don't trust people on their words. If they can say it, they can also write it down.
That's a very tough lesson. My father has always been trying to teach me, like, unless it's written down, it's not true. And as you see, even if it's written down, then it does not mean that much in today's world, which is very scary, of course.
Yeah.
In a lot of aspects.
And but what I've also learned is not to let it get under my skin. It's to let it affect your life that way. It's you have to deal with it and get on with it.
How do you do that? How do you personally do that so it doesn't affect you on a personal level? Because it's something a lot of people struggle with a lot, not only in Roundnet or in sports, but in life in general, when they cannot separate work and private, or sports and private, people behaving on the court differently than they are in the private life. So how do you deal with that?
I do. These days I've done a lot of meditation also talking about my feelings, also with people who are not within the bubble you're struggling with. So, and when we talk also with people who are outside that bubble, then you can also make it not that big in your head. And also, how do you call it? Put it into perspective. And
then,
in the end, life is about enjoying your own life and respecting yourself and the ones you love. And when you start learning that and adapting that into daily life, I think life becomes far more valuable, because you get better and deeper connections with people around you. And that all puts it into perspective. Life is not about having a big car or a big house or traveling dozens of places and only showing on Instagram how cool your life is. It's about having peace with yourself and with the people you love. I think that's the most important, and that helps putting things into perspective. Everything life passes by, and sometimes you have great times, sometimes you have shit times, But in the end, every day the sun comes up, and have to make the best out of it. And that's simply how I manage it.
And you said it wonderfully. I'm getting goosebumps because it's really from the heart. I mean, I couldn't agree more. I mean, there are things that are outside of our control, things that we can control. And I've listened to an interview recently that someone got their assets frozen from unlawful perspective, like millions or billions of dollars. And the host asked him, "Aren't you mad?" He's like, "No, I cannot control it." "Do you get mad on rain?" "No, it just rains. It passes."
Exactly.
I was like, okay, this is so profound. Like, of course, like, you don't get mad in rain. People do, but you have absolutely zero influence. Just wear a better jacket.
Yeah.
Or nowadays, cool off. We want rain. We want rain now. It's so hot.
Yeah, it's totally true. If it would make sense for me to get mad at it, I would get mad at it. But it doesn't make sense. I cannot control it. So well, in the end, it's a loss of energy, and
Yet
focus on positive things.
Yet it still sucks. I mean, this is what people think. Oh, it should not suck. No, it sucks. I mean, I cannot control, but it sucks.
Yeah.
Right. So, and I have to work with that and with everything in life. Also, it can be on a very small scale. Okay, you lost the game, you lost the point. Okay, it sucks, but move on. Next point, next game, next match.
There's a very good video from Roger Federer explaining how he deals with it. Roger Federer says, "Well, I've only won 65% of my games." You know it.
I've seen it. It was a commencement speech, I think, at one of the universities. It is. Yeah. I'll put it in the show notes, or maybe even
for sure.
Instagram. I saved it immediately. I didn't need to know when to end. It's great. I know. I was like, okay, this is. I need to show this to everyone who I coach.
Yeah.
So we'll show it. We'll show it in the show notes.
And this is truly something. I've seen it also because with CrossNet, I've also traveled to some beach volleyball tournaments, and over there I felt the same kind of vibe. And there was one moment also in Mallorca when I was at the beach volleyball camp, and at one part of the beach, people were playing beach volleyball, staying active, having fun, enjoying life and socializing. And then the other part of the beach, at the terraces from the bars and the cafes, all these fat English people were sitting with very, very big beers and big bellies, watching, shouting, and being negative about what happened on the screen where England was playing. And the contrast never was more visible than over there when I saw joyful people, healthy people, enjoying life, enjoying socializing, and people who were only staring at the television, fat, ugly, and being negative. Positive versus negative. And that's what I mostly take away from it.
Now you were already so here with all the people listening, like, okay, hope, and now you called someone ugly and fat, and now everyone got offended.
Sorry. Sorry. Only human too. Yeah.
Oh, sorry to burst your bubble, but let us know in the comments if you got offended.
Yeah, I'm a tall guy. Everybody calls me tall as well. So I have developed this response when I see a fat. Yeah, you're fat as well. It's just a factual description of what you are, just like you're a factual description of what I am.
Or I think we should not get into discussion unless I get canceled before this starts. Go really viral.
Sorry.
Oh my goodness. No, I think this is absolutely great way to stop. But before we do, Worlds 24 coming up. Will you stop by in London to get all the high fives? Even though I know you're not there for the high fives.
Well, 1st of August, I'm starting a new job. So I'm still waiting for the schedule. But if I can, I will come and pop by. Yeah.
That would be awesome. I think the entire community would love to see you. And we'll see. It's going to be a very interesting time after Worlds in the Roundnet world, as some people have already discussed privately, publicly. I also believe said it a couple of months ago in a private call with Charles from Canada, the founder of Revol. The sport is very likely going to hit its all-time low. I really hope it's not going to be the case, but I'm afraid it will be, especially if it's dry with the current state of the game. And what are your thoughts on the state of the game now from the viewer perspective? Because you work in media, you know how to market things. But if you look at the Roundnet game, that it is not very attractive, right? The highs low with the serves and then 1 to 3. So what do you think needs to change in order to not fall so deeply as we will probably fall after London? But what are some of your suggestions or how to make it more watchable?
No, first of all, it's very positive that everybody's thinking about it this way, because that means everybody's aware of what is happening. And awareness is the first step before you can take action. And in terms of taking action, I think simply adjusting some regulations to make it less a serve game and more of a dive game.
So really active, dynamic.
Yeah, it's and I compare it all the time with how they look at Formula One, which are obviously completely different. But the way of thinking is how can we still keep this thing attractive to watch? And that's a very important aspect. And I think if you look at it that way, make it the viewability an important aspect and adjust the game around that aspect, then I still believe in the future of Roundnet. And I think it's really important to have people like yourselves and also, but everybody who's on some kind of board or doing voluntarily work. All those people are very, very, very important to keep this momentum going. And on the other hand, I also recognize that it's still way too small to attract serious media contracts. That's simply the case, because you need people who want to watch before you can sell it as a media package. So, on the other hand, if it doesn't get broadcast or streamed somewhere, you also don't attract the viewers. Simple as that. First, leadership is important. Vision.
Leadership, okay.
And from that vision, also some funding to create a good fundament for the sport. Get more coaches out there. Get more people connected to the sport. Support growth by widening the sport. And having also a good long-term vision about it, with clear goals and KPIs and how you measure it. For example, number of registered clubs and registered players. Those are important things. And then you can also put a strategy on that, on how to grow on those KPIs.
Aren't you not interested in running for the Euro board? I think we're already one day past. Yeah, it would have been amazing timing had we filmed yesterday, because spontaneous. I think maybe something could be done, because if anyone who has a little thing between their ears called brain, then they know you would be such a great contribution to the board or leadership to the next board, because the old board now or the current board are not going to go for the next term.
Yeah.
So, because the big question is, who is going to do all of this and who's going to pay for it? Because it sounds like you have the chicken and the egg.
Yeah.
Okay, we need more money, we need great leadership, but there's no money. Okay, where do we get money? What do we get first? How do we do that? Because the game needs to change. It's still very, very early. I mean, people are now all about the pickleball craze in the US, and pro players, tennis players are playing pickleball. Everything is expanding, but pickleball has been around for, I think, over 20 years.
Yep.
And then one guy with a lot of money came in, poured money in it, and now it's taking off.
Yeah.
So how would you, I mean, if you don't go for the board or at least an advisor, or something to the future board. How would you start this? Because it's the matter of starting. There's probably not right or wrong, but from your experience, from Eredivision, from ESPN, from the media broadcasting world, what would you do? How to convince someone crazy enough to do it for free?
How would I would first start with the plan. Start with where do we want to? I think IRF has something like that. To be in the Olympics in 2032, I guess.
International Roundnet Federation for people listening, watching, but the board is also changing there, and the leaders, from my understanding, Jack Scotty and Fre Eskens, Jack from the US and Fre from Belgium, are not going to be continuing on the board. There's going to be also a new era, and they're all just volunteers. No one's getting paid. So it could be very difficult to put in so much work without the financing.
No, I would say, as an example of setting a clear goal. Okay, we want to be an Olympic sport, and this is what needs to be done to become an Olympic sport. That's what's on their website. I think for European Roundnet, it should be kind of like the same. Okay, this is where we are now. This is where we want to be in 2030. This is what needs to be done to get there. And if you have that plan, that's also where it starts. Then you can, then you also know what kind of funding would be needed to get there. Do you need 50,000 euros? Do you need 100,000 euros? Do you need 5 million euros? And it all depends. You can all, if you want 5 million in prize money, then it becomes interesting, of course. When you need to attract 5 million euros out of the market somewhere, which is more difficult than 50,000 euros. So, but first defining the goal, and then strategy, and find ways to achieve those goals. That's
but
what I was
my question is, who is going to write that plan? Because like I could write that plan theoretically, or I had a plan when I was part of the board for a year, but then I need to convince other board members to buy into that plan, right? I'm not saying my plan is amazing or was amazing. It was a plan, better than no plan. But how to get a person C who has the knowledge from marketing or ChatGPT or everything from real world, who's probably needs to be a little bit older, not a 22-year-old, right? At least 30 plus, depending on the experience, to say, okay, I'm going to now go and be this person. Because we had people who are entrepreneurs in the community, they also stepped down from the boards because they were just frustrated with the lack of progress, or they said, okay, I'm not going to spend so much time and energy trying to convince someone who does not understand the sport so well to say yes to my plan. I know this happens everywhere in corporate world, in schools when I work as a teacher. But I know for me, it's like, okay, this is simply not worth it. But how do we find that person? Like, how could we do this? That's what I'm really concerned about.
That's a good question. That's a good question. Maybe we should talk about this later.
Yeah, we definitely can.
I'll give it some thoughts.
And exactly, because I found it so difficult. I was on the board for almost a year. We established some great things. Then some things were not working out, so I stepped aside. But in anything, voluntary organizations, you will always have people that don't like you, don't like the idea. They are not in for the mission, and that's completely fine, right? But I see this is a big challenge, because if there was, or if it was public, this is the amount of money you could make. At least I know some Eastern European countries who are economically not so strong, tell them, okay, you can make 15,000 euros a year, as an example, right? For us, not a lot of money. For them, maybe that's a decent job, right? A teacher in Slovakia makes 1,000 euros a month or less. So it's your yearly salary, which you would get for working full-time on something that you actually like. You may not be the best, but you are going to learn and improve, and you'll be held accountable because there is this money that we can crowdfund, or actually believe there is the money, and we need to spend on this one person, and then accept him or her as the leader buy into the vision and then go. But I find very difficult if you don't have that someone, or you don't have the money initially, because it takes a lot of time. I know personally from running Fresh, Refresh, whatever it's, or Era, that's ours is a full-time job. And when you're not working, you're thinking about it. You just cannot, I meditate, but you cannot shut it off. So it's always there. And I talked to some people outside of my bubble back then, because they're like, you're crazy. Why do you continue? Like, why do you spend so much time and effort when it's not even appreciated? Or like people don't want it to change. I was like, that's a fair point.
Yeah. That's something you also have to take into consideration before stepping into something like that. But yeah, how to find that person? Yeah,
because it can end as Doc Frisbee. If you have people in charge who want it to be Doc Frisbee, then okay, that's going to stay that way. And there's nothing wrong about it. There are gonna be new sports coming up. But if you're really passionate about this thing, then go to Roundnet, Spikeball, Premier Spikeball, whatever you want, trampoline, bouncing the ball in trampoline, then you have the responsibility to do something about it on a small level in your community, in your club, or you can even go on the European level and hopefully, or national level, and get paid for it. But I know the NGBs are also not really getting paid for. Right around in Germany, it's all volunteers, and it's, nothing short of phenomenal what they have achieved. Just doing by heart, and it's just very, very unreal to me. But if we want this to be a sport, if you personally who are watching and held up so long to this point with me, of two of us rambling, then you need to do something and need to speak up, and we need to all start tying and pulling on the same rope. Because at this point, I don't think we are. Maybe I'm too far from the community nowadays. I don't know. But I feel that there's a chaos. We've been in a chaos, organized chaos a little bit. But if we really want this to make a sport after the Worlds, some of us will have to sit down and really brainstorm and do some serious things.
True.
But it's just frustrating because I love it so much. I still do. It's been a focal point of my life for 5 years, and it's just, it's just tough. But
maybe we should sit down.
Let's do that, but we will not make it public. Not yet. We'll see.
No. That's something we need to fill out.
Yeah, something we can just tease out. We'll see in the near. But what were some of the key learnings that you've taken away from your Roundnet career as an executive? So to say, is Brookline now moving on? Instead of the negatives, you cannot trust people. Not so great. But you've met some people. But what were some of maybe some key learnings? Could be about the sport, but also general.
In general, I have hope in the younger generation.
Really?
Yeah. Totally. I told my friends at home, I said, well, it's not that bad with all these young people. It's lots of positivity, lots of awareness. Everybody's conscious about what's happening in the world today. Well, I can trust it. I'm confident it will work out one way or the other, and I'm sure they will struggle, and everybody will struggle. But I'm pretty confident. It's pretty good people out there, and and I was struck by the openness and friendliness everywhere, and that's coming from football. That really was an eye opener to me, truly, and because within football, it's more old boys network, old fashioned rivalry, those kinds of things. And I step into a world with lots of love and kindness, and that's really gave me hope some way or the other, and it also made me a better person. So thank you for that, everybody.
Thank you, European Round Committee.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, Tom. Anyway, thank you so much for taking the time. Where can people find you? For example, your LinkedIn, or if they want to connect with you also in your future job, where can they find you?
On LinkedIn, will share my profile and also through my WhatsApp.
Tom Schreus, perfect. Don't give WhatsApp number to the world.
I don't care. And my
No,
email
just kidding.
at gmail.com.
tomschreus@gmail.com. Guys, you heard it. If you have any feedback or anything that you're struggling with, or you want Tom's opinion, or share your opinion so we can learn and move this thing, just let us know. And Tom, I really hope you can make it to London to see you again, and you'll see how the sport has progressed. 30 plus countries are coming to the Worlds in UK, which is really, really crazy, and huge respect to all the volunteers and all the people who are doing it. I'll be there for sure as well.
Yeah.
And simply attack. Guys, thank you so much for listening. Tom Schreutz.
Thank you.
Let's go. Attack.
Let's go.